Okay, I believe we are live. We're live. Okay. let's get this show on the road. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies. Tonight we're going to be talking about Park. Oh, good grief! Where was I there? Right. We're going to be talking about Park Chan-wook's decision to leave. All right, enough of that nonsense. That's right. 2022 Korean filmmaker Park Chan-wook makes a decision to leave. And here's the dealio from IMDb, the IMDb log line. How did he put this here? Oh, yes. A detective investigating a man's death in the mountains meets the dead man's mysterious wife in the course of his dogged sleuthing. I don't know if you heard that in the digital green room, Jim, but dogged sleuthing. Did you? Dogged.
Dogged.
Dogged. Jim, why don't you tell us about who's in front of and behind the camera?
Okay. Well, for Decision to Leave, we have, as mentioned, it's a Park Chan-wook movie. It is kind of at a restrained part of his life, I would argue. The film stars Tang Wei, Park Hae-il, Lee Jung-hyun, Go Kyung-pyo, and Park Yong-woo as Im Ho-shin. The first two, our two leads are Tang Wei as the femme fatale, let's say, Song Seo-rae, and Park Hae-il as the troubled insomniac detective Jang. So those are the two heavy hitters in this one. But yeah, and I think I should mention who wrote it. It was a Park Chan-wook and a Jeong Seo-kyung collaboration. I apologize for massacring all those names, but
Jim, didn't you
Kamsahamnida
message
for
me?
your patience.
Didn't you message me about the lead? Something
Yes.
about the femme fatale, perhaps?
As long time viewers and some of our friends on the show might know, we're pretty big on a movie, an Indian movie called Three Idiots. And evidently Tang Wei was cast in a role, and I haven't seen it. And this is the first I've heard of it, in fact, in a I believe it was a Chinese language version of Three Idiots.
So she provided the voice?
Yeah,
or was it like a whole remake?
Yeah, I think it was a whole. Well, let me just see what I
okay.
sent you the message about.
Look
2
that
in the
up,
morning, but,
and we'll bring it up
sure.
later. Let's keep moving here,
Sure.
as I have a couple of things before we get into the spoiler zone. And first, Jim, I wanted to ask you, how do you define a noir film?
Noir is, I know it when I see it. No, I'm just kidding. It's like the old definition for pornography, but it's typically a very, well, what did I put down here? I wrote some notes. It's kind of cynical, morally ambiguous, dark in tone and visuals, but not always. It generally describes the downfall of the main, usually male character. I don't want to generalize too much. And that downfall can be death, can be the loss of
a downfall.
Job or hope or anything like that. Has a femme fatale. And I would add my own thing.
Okay.
And I haven't really
All
seen
right.
this. I just wanted to add one thing.
Yep.
There's a claustrophobia about film noir for me, or rather, these are big in this film, big busy cities, and we only really focus on these two people. So it feels like they're the only two people in the room when they're not, and that's sort of the focus on the individuals there, or the duo.
Okay. For myself, I got a little, here's my definition of a film noir, of a noir film. I think it has to have two elements. One, you're absolutely right. It has to involve the fall of a character, the fall of the hero, as a matter of fact. Some fatal flaw that sinks him usually, that sinks that protagonist in the end. The other thing, though, is it's got to involve a crime. That's got to be the heart of the whole story, whether the protagonist is the criminal or the cop or a bystander who gets involved. There's got to be a crime at the heart of the story. And this is why, based on those two major criteria, Election, Alexander Payne's Election, which we did cover, and I'll put a link up here somewhere. Election is a noir, whereas Ridley Scott's Blade Runner is not a noir. There you go. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I did some, after we talked about what we would present, I took a look at, I did a little reading and a little viewing of various videos, and I admit I came out of it a little more confused than when I went in, because they show you clips of movies, you're like, is that noir? And Taxi Driver, I know people say is sort of a noir. I don't know.
Anyway, I don't think Taxi Driver would be a noir.
No, I don't think so either.
Crime may be in general, the mean streets, but there is no specific crime driving the action. Sunset Boulevard starts with his death. You know what the crime is. This one, the guy fell off a mountain, and it perhaps not an accident.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is noir. Well, I would say it's a micro genre. Eric Williams, he's been on our show in his taxidermy, screenwriter's taxonomy. Sorry, he doesn't think of it as a micro genre, a subset of the crime genre. I do. But it started as more of a circumstance. The end of what became known as film noir, black and white, one light, like a lot of dark lighting, almost always a cop movie, hard-boiled detective, some sort of crime thing, really is as much about the economics of the film business in the 40s and 50s as the Hays Code was just year in, year out being ignored. The big studios were getting out of the business of making movies and more about saying, well, producer, tell you what, we'll distribute that thing. Here's what we'll pay you for it. So all of a sudden, budgets were getting squeezed. And producers were looking for, well, let's just say racier content, sex and we would rent the kit from the studios, and it's like, do you really need all those lights? What are we, Paramount here? So all of a sudden you get one light, you get very few, as you're talking about that claustrophobic feel. Yeah. Well, guess what? Can we shoot it in that room? What do you need that? You don't need a big city street. Well, that's extras. Where's that money coming from? You can just imagine that producer chewing a cigar, churning out hard-boiled detective, and so all of a sudden later, and I think it was like Truffaut, like all those Cahiers de Cinema guys who are like, film noir. Look, it's got a quality, but it's a much like Art Deco, something applied after the fact. Yeah. If that makes any sense. I'm sorry, I wanted to finish that. You were gonna say something on that though, Jim.
Oh, what was I going to say now? I think I think that's pretty much I covered what I wanted to say. But it did leave me with questions. For instance, would you count Casablanca as as a film
No.
noir, and I don't think I would.
Yeah.
I mean, he does.
Hey, they had to wait a
technically
lot more money. That was
lose
beautifully
some-
lit.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's almost got the feel of an ensemble. You sort of forget all the other characters, but you know,
And where's the fall? Who falls?
Yeah.
As
Well,
a
he
matter of
doesn't
fact,
get the
he is
girl.
redeemed.
Yeah.
That's not a fall. You not
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
what you want is not the
Yeah.
same as you destroying yourself over what you want. He
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah.
He's redeemed. He makes the right call.
Well,
he
and as
saves her life, and he saves the war.
and the Swede's life, her husband's
Well,
life. there,
that's
but-
how he saves the war, because he
Victor,
was crucial to it for
Yeah,
some reason.
but
yeah,
you know, and I'm thinking about the last scene when they're walking across the runway, and I'm thinking, yeah, that doesn't feel noir. It's like, let's get a drink. You know, it's just
no, like there's not a. It ends in a wedding.
yeah,
There's no way Aristotle would watch that and go, well, wow, that's tragic. The catharsis
Yeah.
of tragedy.
Yeah.
No, it's a comedy. It ends in a wedding. Maybe not the wedding we initially want for Rick, but it does end in a wedding. A beautiful
Yeah.
friendship on one hand, and he saved his girl's life. His girl, his gal.
yeah.
And this is why I am now going to go to my dying day, saying Blade Runner is not a noir. I mean, it's got a dark tone, it's got a noir aesthetic, but it's not a noir. He is redeemed by the death of the supposed bad guy who says, I could kill you, but I want to be remembered. So he gets not a villain's monologue, but an actual celebration of his humanity, Roy Batty's humanity. And so what does Deckard do? He gets his girl and he says, we're getting out of here.
Yeah.
You know, even in the super final cut, while everyone obsesses over, is he a replicant or isn't he? It doesn't matter. It's
Everybody
his
is.
his choice to walk away.
Yeah.
That's key with her. You know,
Yeah.
with Sean Young's character, whose name for sakes I can't remember. And so, yeah, that isn't. Oh, we got Richard L. in the house. Good to see you, Richard.
Hey, Rich.
Yeah, so yeah, that's why I'm going to now argue it ends like all good comedy should, with a wedding.
And there are funny scenes in it too. The whole such much what clock, you know, the people learning English. That's a low key one of the better scenes in the movie. But yeah, no.
Which movie?
Well, I thought you were talking about Casablanca.
No,
But,
yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about Blade Runner.
Yes, yeah. But that's the thing that I bring out from most of these. Like, what do I remember about film noirs that I've seen a long time ago? And it's usually the two people. So it's almost, they're not two-handers, but it's almost like, Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck and Double Indemnity. That kind of thing and that's the like. I'm sure there's other characters. I don't necessarily remember who they are or what they do, but
Yeah.
William Holden and Gloria Swanson in Sunset's Strip there. So,
yeah. Sunset Boulevard. Well,
Sunset
and
Boulevard,
you
rather.
look at, you think about a great noir has to have is most likely a villain or a misunderstood heroine.
Mm-hmm.
And how effective a filmmaker can ride that line, ride that edge, makes for such a strong character that you buy the fall of the protagonist.
Yeah.
You know, you can kind of say, oh, because I think a good noir should be, I get why he did. Maybe you wouldn't have done it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you would have, but you're not going, what an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Jim. Let's move past that. Although I suspect we're going to revisit this part of the conversation. We still haven't even gotten into the spoiler zone.
No, we haven't. No.
But I do want to ask you, decision to leave. Is it a see it or skip it? And in a sentence, why do you feel that way?
I would say see it. It's a tense, beautifully shot film that works best in its quietest moments, and also for Tang Wei, the femme fatale in this case. She's amazing. I think she's got tons of chemistry,
Okay.
charisma.
Myself, I'm going to say it's a skip it, actually, a soft skip it. I agree. It's got style galore. And Park's ability to manage mood and to set a tone is unfucking rivaled. And I even agree with you about the performances. That said, I was never engaged. As a matter of fact, actually, I'll tell you which scene once we get into the spoiler zone, but I'm not going to lie, Jim. Within the first 12 minutes, I'm like, I don't care about anybody here. Anyway, that's my take on it. But
Yeah,
it is a soft one. A soft one. I can recognize that it's still a good movie. All right. With that out of the way. No, with that finally out of the way, let's get into the spoiler zone. Wow, that was pretty good, eh? Jim, before I watched the film, now you know how I feel about it. Before I watched the film, though, I wanted to ask you why you thought Park was snubbed at this year's Oscars. It was, this decision to leave was considered a heavy favorite to at least make the short list.
Yeah.
To be one of the nominees, didn't make it at all. And so I wanted to ask you why you thought that happened. Now I'm going to ask you if you think he was snubbed at this year's Oscars.
Yeah, you had a soft skip it. My see it wasn't, I wasn't blown away by this. I quite liked it, and I would absolutely watch this again, if I had the time, because there's tons of stuff going on. But there was an emotional disengagement. As I said in my summary, is that I think this works best in the quietest moments. But at the very end, when he's searching for her in the crashing waves, I should have been, like, oh my God, I should have been ripped apart. And I was sort of watching it, and from a distance, it felt like,
observing it, not.
Yeah. And I think there's a detachment. Also, the way that the information is presented throughout the movie, there's a bit of a time jump that just sort of goes like that. And the only way you can tell it is that her hair is longer. So, so there's some issues here with, I think, pace. Well, the way that information is given out. But anyway, there's a little bit of emotional distance here. Intellectually, some of the shots were crazy. They were obviously sort of having they use all kinds of camera, whether it's, during the chase.
And
they
a ton of green screen.
Yeah. But there's tons of technical stuff that they do, and I get the impression that they're having fun with it, not that it's a sort of an obligation of theirs. And so it is super interesting to watch, the use of color, the sort of the color palette, everything else, but there's an emotional detachment there. And there's a couple scenes where I was actually going along with it, one of which is when the two couples meet in the market in the second half of the movie when they move to Ipoh Town, or Ipoh City. And I thought that was a really great tense scene, and the sort of the subtle communication, nonverbal communication that the two leads had while their spouses were, talking on the side. I thought that was a real achievement. But then it for me, it never sort of transcended that. It came in dribs and drabs, and when it was there, it was amazing. Like, it did feel like an actual. I could see the relationship develop here. And it felt kind of real, and not that it would last, but there. So they did achieve something. They just didn't. Like, I was left wondering why I wasn't more sort of, gutted at the end.
Well, you know what it reminded me of, Jim? Is Tenet. Like, super competently shot, super stylistic. you know there is a director totally in charge. But much like Tenet, I'm not sure the director was totally that interested in how you and I felt about what was going on the screen.
Yeah.
And yes, I do mean Park and Nolan should have been personally engaged in what you, Jim Cheboyko, and I, Rob Christensen, felt. But smart remarks aside, I mean, the audience, in neither film, I felt like the director cared about us. You know, it's like, they like it, they don't. I'm making my capital A art here.
Yeah. I just, there, like I said, there's a chilliness there. And it's funny too, because for something that's all about sort of want and yearning, there's really just one sex scene, and it's really basic. It's just him and his wife with their scheduled sex night, and it's not particularly.
Is it the first one?
Yeah, I think so.
First act, she's just lying there. She's got a smile on.
Yeah. And then she says her philosophy: we should do this once a week at least, and
that's where I checked out.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's where I checked out. I was like I'm like, okay, really, give me someone to care about.
Yeah.
I just wanted a quick note here, relevant to what we're talking about.
Sure.
First of all, DMG is in the house. He's in the chat right now. But he also says, Jim, here's his comment. Bear with me, my friend.
Sure, yeah.
He says, yes, decision to leave. Sounds like my reaction to seeing Renfield in the theaters. Oh, that sounds harsh.
Timely. It's timely.
Timely and harsh. Harsh on Renfield. So I believe, at least theater-wise, DMG might be making a skip it recommendation. But I'll wait for him to add on to that in the chat. Or, of course, he could just post a link in the comments later to his instant movie review on that. Love to put it up there. All right. Yeah. Jim, let me ask you, you praised in particular Tang Wei's performance, who may also be known to English-speaking audiences as Rebecca Tang, but we'll use her Chinese name, Tang Wei. What made her performance work for you? If you can label a thing.
Yeah, there was just a certain level of subtlety. Like I bought her. Sometimes if you see an actress or an actor rather, you can sort of see the gears turning. But there was an effortlessness with her performance, and it was very subtle too. And it wasn't just. She wasn't like the equivalent of a mustache twirling femme fatale. Like she didn't do the Catherine O'Hara used to always do them, and even Andrea Martin on SCTV did them, 40 years ago in their sketch comedy, where they would have the deep voice and everything else, and she doesn't. There's no sort of affectation. Yeah,
sorry.
It's okay. There's no affectation here. She just, you sort of wonder about her motives, and you sort of wonder where she's coming from, and you sort of suspect that there's other things going on here. But it's kind of an interesting take on the femme fatale, and I think she delivers. There's a few scenes where she's a little bit, giggly, and there's I thought it was kind of interesting.
The typical cop, that's not an appropriate reaction to death.
Yeah, which is kind of
debunked.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But this first scene when when he calls her in for questioning, and they get the fancy sushi from Shima Sushi, and they're sort of eating, and then they're cleaning up afterwards. So there's a real nice, and they're cleaning up in tandem, like wordlessly, and there's just a nice sort of she's got a real great presence, and she's got a real subtlety. I really quite. And there's something going on behind the eyes. There's always that a lot is brought up about the ice cream, and even Mubi was advertising. If you got those little ads in front of your YouTube things that you used to watch a couple months back, it was always this. Oh, she's had ice cream for dinner again, and so that she's eating ice cream. And there's thoughts going through her head, like there's something going on behind the eyes, as I said.
Yeah. Imagine, let's just imagine if this film was one of those, she's the red herring, not the real one. Mm-hmm. And then the cop figures out it's actually the partner for some other suspect, maybe his wife, who insert Machiavellian scheme, unsupportable But we've seen those movies. Mm-hmm. Would this one, though, have been better? It certainly would have been. It wouldn't have been a park film, but
yeah, I had some similar questions.
Because here's the thing: is at times she's like, "Well, am I supposed to sympathize with her? Mm-hmm. Is there? No, I'm not. She is the femme fatale." But even then, some of the ways, like the way she dies. That she kills herself, which I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I didn't get that. I didn't get that. And yes, folks, we are in the spoiler zone. So, this is the moment where I also say, if you could, give us a like and a subscribe. It does help us out as we approach 500.
Getting there, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we're getting close. Anyway. Where was it?
Yeah,
I don't know. What do you think of that? Is that crazy?
No, I've thought I've thought things like that watching other movies too. And I think this is a genuine question. Tang Wei is.
Have I gone
crazy?
Oh, there's a new one. Hope we have the budget for that.
We just blew it on that. We're done.
Comes out of the crane shot money.
Polynesian town.
A genuine question that I had, obviously Tang Wei is a beautiful woman. Yeah. Would she be as sympathetic if she wasn't as attractive? That's sort of one of the things that I was wondering. Or not taking away from her skills as an actress. Just want to make that clear. Yeah. But would her character have been as sympathetic if she wasn't as attractive as she was presented? And she's not even dressed like she's sort of wearing dowdy sweaters and sort of floor length.
Remember, we're given that hint like that maybe she's being hit by her husband.
Yeah.
Right? Which sort of fits. But I think that's a great question, Jim, that goes to the politics of your typical film noir. Mm. The typical femme fatale, that it's almost like she has to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Because that is how she casts her spell.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking,
subtle light across the eyes, as she comes in the office or something to that effect. Yeah.
Which usually happens in regular offices, exactly. As opposed to the usual.
Yeah.
Everyone looks awful.
The Joe versus the volcano flickering fluorescent lighting.
Is that Joe Dante who wrote and directed that? I believe it was.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah, I believe it was Joe Dante, and he playwright, and that's a play film. That's very theater staging.
Yeah.
Back to I think that is, but I think that goes to the politics of film in general. If you're maybe even story, beauty is almost always equated with beauty, handsomeness equated usually with good. You play an ugly character. Well, some of it is just the nature of visual storytelling. Well, ugly in soul, ugly on the stage. I'm thinking of Richard III. Apparently did have a bit of a hump. It was maybe not quite as
pronounced.
as bent and crooked as I am, I will wreak vengeance upon the world, or whatever the hell Richard III says in the play. But you're right. I think it'd be a different movie if she was physically less attractive. We'd be watching a different movie. We wouldn't be watching a noir.
Yeah.
Like, she would have to be another character, which I'm not saying it's right. That goes to kind of the politics of film noir. But and that leads to another question, Jim. What do regardless of my take on it, another thing I sort of struggled with was, well, what the hell is he saying? What is Park saying about the human condition? He's certainly not saying anything about policing. We've seen this cop before, who falls in love with the person that he is. It's so generic, so conventional that it's the cop who has to worry about the small woman, when usually when you read about it, it's like, no, that's who the cop creeps on forever until he kills her, because thugs be thugs. What is Park? So Park's not making any. Usually there's some sort of politics going on. This is more like Old Boy in a way, eh?
Yeah, and
because I don't think there was much political. Looking back, it was like, was there a big societal statement being made there?
Yeah. I mean, when things are so plot heavy, it's sort of hard. When so much of the engine of a movie is devoted to powering the plot, then I think that there's not as much left over for message. I think there's something about the unknowability of people, how you're always sort of guessing. Do you ever truly know anyone? I think that's sort of an aspect.
Yeah.
But that's,
can you know
somebody thoroughly? Despite your nice moments or moments of trust or moments of camaraderie or what have you, can you fully 100% know someone? And I think there's an aspect of that in it, if there is a message. But again, a lot of this is plot. So I think that sort of sometimes takes away what you want to do message wise.
Here, I'm going to just a sec here. Let me jump into. I've got a couple of comments from DMG here. Let me read them out. Okay. Jim brings up a great point. How's about an unattractive femme fatale? I'm wondering if, and this is I don't, and does it have to be, although, and folks, for everyone in the chat, or you're watching this on after the live show, down in the comments, I can't think of it right now, but it's not, I am sure there is a noir where it's the woman detective being destroyed by the handsome masculine bastard. But he goes on, he says, instead of Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct, cast Cameron Manheim as Catherine Trammell. LOL. That's a little fat shaming there, DMG. That said, and here's the thing, cast it just that way and let Manheim bring out those chops. Apparently no one was saying, even contemporaries said Cleopatra, and I'm not saying Cleopatra was a femme fatale. Point I'm trying to make here is about beauty and charisma and attractiveness is boy, I'm really getting stuck on that. Beauty, attractive, charisma. Yes, Cleopatra. This is where I was going, Jim, about Cleopatra.
Sure.
Contemporaries of Cleopatra, even Roman critics of her, no one said she was super beautiful, but they all said she was super charismatic. You know, we've all met those people, regardless of gender or sexuality, you know, where it's like, boy, you're sexy AF, even though you do not fit the mainstream, the view of generic attractiveness.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Not
know,
typically. Yeah.
And so, yeah, now there you got to kind of think about those films where they've cast those people who have just brought the smoke, brought the heat to the role.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. Now that's all I'm going to be thinking about.
Well,
Great point,
Well,
though.
yeah,
Great.
you think
Thanks for adding to that DMG. Notwithstanding, and I'm just teasing you about the Catherine Manheim fat shaming thing. Okay, sorry, Jim. You were saying?
I
My
was just going to
apologies.
say, it's always tricky with those things like, what was that River Phoenix movie with where Lily Taylor was supposed to be called Dogfight? Was that the one where she was supposed to be the unattractive woman? Perfectly attractive woman in real life, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that's kind of, anyway. Yeah, just kind of, it's so weird. Those kinds of movies are so weird, I'm sure, casting and everything else, but yeah.
DMG does add to it. He goes, his point being, if you cast someone in the femme fatale role, not defined as attractive, and attractive within, like culturally bound in time, or let's say era, is it even believable? And I'm like, yeah, I like what you're talking about, Jim, or was it David Mamet's? Oh, was it House? It wasn't House of Cards. Great con artist movie, which is very, well, that's like a lot of con movies are, if they have a dark turn, they are great noirs.
Yeah.
But this one was not. And it was written and directed, I believe, by David Mamet. Not Julian Krauss. I think her last name was Krauss. Not a typical.
Lindsay Krause.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Lindsay Krauss. But she was more the victim of, I think it was Joe Mantegna. Wasn't he
It's been
playing
a while
the
since I saw that. Yeah.
sleazy, oh well.
Like a memory
You know
game
what? Maybe
today.
somebody in the somebody in the chat will comment on that. But that's a great. It's a great comment, DMG. Or is it just reduced to an SNL sketch? But I think they're out there.
Yeah.
Richard L. says things are great and spring is here for us at long last. Oh, never mind. Richard L. is referring to a question DMG posed to him in the chat. I'll move on now.
I thought it was
Sorry.
a riddle or something.
It was like, I understand this is about us, Jim. Damn it. All right.
Limerick? The start of a limerick? I don't know what's going on.
What do you think of just going into, and I agree with you here, style galore and really painterly scenes.
Yeah.
And the shots are held long enough that you can soak in the beauty. What do you think the symbolism is of all these mountains and falling down them?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the symbolism of these painterly mountainous images that they're a regular motif. I think I even used it. Actually, I can bring it up. There's the thumbnail I used, and you look at the wallpaper, and it's that mountainous background that you seem to see in a lot of Asian motifs.
Yeah, and that's if you go to a...
And that's for the chat, too.
Yeah. If you go to a museum featuring, I was just in the Minneapolis Institute of Art last month, and they have a great East Asian, sort of Chinese, Japanese section. And you get the old scrolls. I mean, this has been a thing forever. And the reason why I'm pointing, and with those very particular, the
When I was in Shanghai and Beijing, like, I mean, in their museums, you saw that stuff. Yeah, I'm not, neither of us are going out on a limb here.
No, but I was going to say, specifically in a place like Guilin, which is in the south of Kent, what used to be called Canton, which is now Guangzhou. But you get those ridiculous karsts, and you see them forever in the art. And you saw it in this movie, and they obviously are using a little bit of CGI. The little mountain that our first husband gets pushed off of looks totally sort of out of place.
Oh, yeah.
It's a karst-like shape. It's a little bit ridiculous. It's like something from Lord of the Rings that was
and then on
dropped
the
on
top of it, it's like a
tree,
a giant bonsai.
Yes, yeah.
You know.
So I think that's sort of hearkening back to hundreds of years of Asian art. But I've read other things
but it's
too.
so constant and consistent.
Yeah.
Where does it come in this film? Like, what is he?
Yeah. I read a lot of some stuff about it, about Decision to Leave, that he is, how did they put it now? He's the mountain, she's the ocean, or something to that effect. And I thought that was pretty simplistic. I didn't sort of really, I just watched this last night, so I didn't delve too much into it today. But yeah, I just thought that was a little too simple. Like in terms of, you can say anything. Who was this guy then? So, so... But I mean, there is a commitment there, and to this, I think they play a lot.
You almost need to look up Korean. Try and get a decent translation of maybe Korean or Japanese or Chinese critics.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Like a deep
sorry,
dive.
you tried to look up. My apologies.
Well, I've years ago, Busan was our first stop in Korea when we went, and it's a fascinating city, and it's slopes, and I was just like, it was my first, time I set foot on the Korean Peninsula, and it's an amazing place to walk around. It's really cool with all the heights and the sort of, as you saw, the staircases all over the place. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that there's a fight sequence on top of an apartment building, and it would almost look like, maybe I'm reading a bit into this, it almost looked like a ship on a sea of other sort of, but the way that they shot it, there was some sort of elevation. And they sort of traced the route of the two guys over the roof. And it was beautifully shot. That was one of my favorite sequences. Just in the day, you saw the city fall away, the city of Busan, in behind. And so is that sort of that, where they couldn't have natural mountains, they had sort of artificial mountains. So there's this high-low thing going, if that doesn't sound too simplistic.
Well, almost
visually,
like
highs and lows going through it.
That triggered something, and so I put up on the screen again the thumbnail, the image I took to create our thumbnail, that wallpaper, because looking at it just before when I put it first up, and because I was only looking at the image slightly behind her and to her left, instead of the mountains I saw a bit of that up, down, that ship on a sea kind of vibe. And I'm like, are these waves? No, they're not waves.
Yeah,
But you've got to think about that. Like, you think about that ending. Is it maybe not he? Yeah, I agree with you. This overly simplistic, he's the mountain, she's the sea. Or is it more a man at sea? A man being tossed up and down. Yeah. The waves of life or something,
Yeah. And a lot is, and it's not a particularly friendly, I mean, we're not talking about beaches that's rocky and wavy and people are throwing things in it to get them lost forever. And it's only when the abalone divers find, a cell phone or something like that. But I think something, too, is that the first husband, take a look at the deaths in the movie, and there's three, some of them happen, older people in hospitals, but three of the deaths, one's a mountain and two are water.
Yeah.
Well, one's in a pool and one's in the ocean. So, I mean, I think there's something significant there, but...
and even one falls from a mountain.
Yes, yeah.
Crushed on the rocks. As though you jumped off a cliff into the ocean and you just managed to miss the water. All kinds of imagery that comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots going on though. Like lots going on in this.
It's, maybe you know what? I think I'm with you, Jim. I may have to rewatch it. It's not going to change my opinion of it. I don't think. Although I should allow for that. Sometimes you just can't connect with the subject, with the film, with the art, and then later on you go, oh no, it's touching me now. I kind of get it. I've been watching. You mentioned Denis Villeneuve. I think it was before the show started, and I have been looking at some of his work again of late, and one piece that I have more appreciation for than I did originally was Sicario.
Oh yeah, okay.
And about it as just great storytelling, even if I think the subject matter and the like there's a noir.
Yeah.
There's a fall at the end.
Yeah.
I won't say who, in case we decide to visit this film, but where was I going with that? Well, yeah,
Villeneuve,
Sicario, where I kind of gained an appreciation for it. One more question, Jim.
Sure.
Do you think, like, there's moments where, in the translation, where he keeps saying to his rookie cop, simpler words, easier words, simpler. Can't remember which. And all I could think of is like, no, I'm sure the translation is be gentler. It's not easier words. It's gentler. But what else are we missing then in this? What else might we be missing because of the challenge of translation?
Yeah, I think we're missing a lot. I think specifically with Tang Wei's character. I believe she's Chinese born, but she has Korean connections. Obviously, can speak Korean, and she did provide the dubbing. I'm sorry for the three idiots version. I did look at my notes, but they talk about it not quite a bit, a couple times during the movie, where. Well, she's often
because she's
apologizing.
A Chinese immigrant, right?
Yes, and she's just learning Korean, so she often apologizes for her Korean. And then it turns out that she's got a very kind of a formalized way of speaking Korean that's maybe a little bit old timey. Like it's not quite current. Maybe but then that makes her sort of giggle. That's part of her, like maybe a little bit of social anxiety there, or something to that effect. So I think that's a big, like, her attempt to learn the language, whether that makes her character endearing or if she speaks in an overly formal tone. That's another thing that we're missing out on. So I think there's quite a bit there. I mean, she does a great job. I mean, she was my favorite part of the movie, but yeah, I think we are missing something there. Maybe not a huge thing, but a character coloring, a character detail that I think the Korean and Chinese audiences would probably pick up on, for sure. Yeah.
Here, Jim, just a sec here. We've got all right, so I'm looking at, here, let me find this. DMG says in the chat, well, first he comments, this is interesting. Amazing how much Korean cinema has emerged on the North American scene the last few years after Parasite won Best Picture. Okay, one comment on that to DMG and to you, Jim. I'm thinking, is this just the latest of what's been a kind of wave? I'm thinking the good, the bad, and the weird.
Oh, yeah,
Of course, still one of my favorites, Space Sweepers.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to watch that movie again, maybe right after this. But I'm thinking of Old Boy by Park Chan-wook.
Park Chan-wook.
Then he goes on to say, Decision to Leave made $22 million on a $10 million budget, and including Past Lives as a Korean-American hybrid this summer, which made it onto DMG's top 15 summer movies.
Oh, okay.
May have to put that on a list of ours, Jim.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Let's go back to the Korean cinema, and can we say, do we want to say rise? Does that make sense?
I mean, they've won Oscars now, so that's it. I mean, whether or not you like them, it's some barometer of some sort. And just the fact that people are drawn to whether it's Squid Game or whatever. I mean, they're drawn BTS. They're drawn to Korean culture.
K-pop. You're talking about that K-pop thing, eh?
Yeah,
K-pop.
yeah. Train to Busan, Blackpink as a girls group, all these kinds of things. But I mean, think a few years ago about Train to Busan. I mean, that was sort of a ooh, got to see that. That sort of was a word of mouth kind of success. So
and what was the sequel? Do you remember offhand what the sequel was? So
I
maybe
think it was
somebody
Seoul
in the chat.
Station. Oh no, that there was a Peninsula one, but there was a prequel, Seoul Station, that was animated that I didn't care for, but I did love Train to Busan. But I don't know what it is. Something said, somebody unlocked a door for someone saying that it's okay to like Korean stuff, and hey, it might even be good. So I don't know what the secret is to that. I don't know what the germ of that was, or whether it was the cool kids listening to the K-pop, or if it was huge obvious hits like Squid Game or what have you.
Yeah,
but
Squid Game. We got to add that to the list.
It sort of snuck in there, and it's here now. It'd be interesting, just off the top of my head, I'm trying to think if there's the Park Chan-wook's made some English movies, but I'm sort of wondering if that's going to translate, if they're going to have like an Ang Lee type of success come over and sort of work in this this area. But they probably don't have to. Like, who cares if you appeal to Hollywood? You're doing fine at home. Yeah. So and your stuff.
And Hollywood knows how to get rights.
Yeah.
Make it their own.
Yeah,
Hollywood's
exactly.
good at that.
Old boy. Yeah. Which old boy are you talking about?
All right, Jim. I think it is time to get into final thoughts. Let's leave our wonderful audience with how could I put it? Leave them wanting more. Anything you wanted to add? And that goes for the chat, folks. Folks in the chat.
Do a real quick rundown of some of my notes. I love the rock climbing scene when the cops are climbing up in tandem. Sort of a couple of oddly broadly comic moments in this. One of the translation was his head bone was broken. I don't know if you caught that or not.
Yes.
Or skull. I love the sound of the turn indicators. There's just a lot of little neat stuff. She calls him up, says, "Come to my home." And it cuts immediately to him driving and shaving at the same time, which was not played as funny, but it was kind of really funny to me. But it was just, there was a lot in this, and I think for me, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not soon, but I'd like to watch this movie again, and lots going on, lots of fun camera work. For me, it was
this makes me think again. It makes me think of Tenet, where you're like. A part of me is like, am I missing something? But a part of me is like, just kind of, no, I'm just going to enjoy the craft of it all.
Yeah. Enjoy the ride.
No, not so much the ride, the craft.
The craft, okay.
Like, because there is no ride here. That is the thing. It's you're so disengaged. Mm-hmm. It's not immersive storytelling. Yeah. But it does also, this week I'm working with somebody to help me with my sound design, and I'm going to be bringing this film up with him. Because you made a great point. It does have an overt soundtrack that is trying to do something. Like you can feel like you're in a place when you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Things like that. All right, Jim, for myself, you know what? I'm wondering, going back to DMG's comment regarding would we even engage with the femme fatale if she wasn't attractive, if that's maybe just an inherent part of that character archetype. I'm wondering if really part of my problem is I'm just no longer interested in this. I'm tired of the trope. I'm tired of this kind of storytelling where you sort of go, all right, well, that idiot's going to get lured in by her and it's going to be, convoluted. Oh my goodness. And shitty ending, bummer ending.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming. What? And I'm wondering if that's maybe it. And I'm not even talking about just me. Going back to my first question once we got in the spoiler zone, maybe that was it. The people who nominate this part of the Academy, I'm not saying that they aren't subject to trends and groupthink.
Yeah.
It's still only 5,000 people to vote on the big prize. But that said, maybe that was, they're the same. They're like, show me something different. I just don't want to see another film noir with a cop who can't sleep. Didn't Al Pacino do that in a Christopher Nolan film?
In Alaska, yeah. Oh, there's blackout curtains. You can figure the blackout curtains out. And,
yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah. Was that called Insomnia? I think it was literally called Insomnia.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, okay.
DMG asks, is Decision to Leave on Netflix? I don't know if it is down south, but it's on Mubi up here in Canada, which, okay, I don't know about, I think you did the same thing as I did, Jim. I watched it on a promo. It was 7 days, see if they can lure me back. Yeah. And I think I have to make my call today or tomorrow on whether or not I will be sticking around for another month. Yeah? There's a lot of interesting shows on there, but a lot of, how do you like to put it, eat your vegetables movies?
Yeah, and is it, I already pay for so much streaming. It's really through the roof. So I gotta sort of watch it. I mean, $14 a month is gonna kill me, but it's a busy time of year for me. So I don't know if I'll be able to actually take advantage of it. So, but it's a handsome channel, handsome packaging, and the video quality I thought was pretty good. So,
okay. Well, with that said, I think it's time to say goodnight to everyone. Thank you all very much. DMG, Richard L., Katie Fowler, I know is out there lurking. Appreciate you all coming, and good night, everybody.
Good night. Tee-hee.